As an international student, I don't know the first Australian too much before I come to Australia. I asked some of my friends who did not come to Australia. They said that they just know Australians have indigenous people, but they know nothing more about indigenous people except it. The first thing to consider is that all the terminology that we will explore have been imposed in one way or another. Before the British came to Australia, there was no such thing as an Aboriginal or Indigenous person. Instead, the land was made up of a multitude of indigenous nations. One of the challenges with using terminology like First Australian is that it tends to homogenize what was a multicultural continent. There were some other terms used to describe First Australia, like Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples, Indigenous Australians, Australia's First People, First Nations, and First Nation peoples. The term First Australians, while it is tolerated, is still fairly meaningless as the word Australian came into existence at Federation in 1901. This is the point where those that colonized the country became citizens of Australia. It is ironic that at that time indigenous people were not considered citizens or indeed considered full human beings and were therefore not considered Australian. In order to understand indigenous Australian deeper, I try to find some historical facts. Australia's colonization is a story of invasion and resistance to invasion. The first undisputed sighting of Australia by a European was made in early 1606. The Dutch vessel King, captained by William Jameson, followed the coast of New Guinea amidst Torres Strait and explored part of the western side of Cape York in the Gulf of Carpentaria, believing the island was still part of New Guinea. The British decided to come to Australia as they needed to quickly secure a new colony after the loss of the American War of Independence. We need to consider that indigenous cultures have always featured laws that protect the well-being of people and country. Law refers to largely orally transmitted protocols and values, and law refers to formal parliamentary laws that are written down. Indigenous communities have always supported human rights since invasion and colonization in Australia and other countries internationally. Indigenous people have experienced a profound and ongoing disruption to their human rights. In order to reclaim these rights, indigenous people have largely been forced to self-advocate within Western legal and governance frameworks. This is an example of the domination of colonizing system of law over indigenous people. In order to deepen the experience of First Australian, I started to work in a community and try to find something that is indigenous. I found that it is hard to identify indigenous people in the modern community. However, I found a gecko sign out of some houses, and I searched online. I know that it is a totem of First Australian. If we work with indigenous people, we are in a kind of privilege. If we are in a position of privilege, it doesn't mean that we can work for social justice and be an ally. In fact, it is very important for those that sit within the dominant culture to take action to fight injustice.